The Pontiffs Anonymous podcast network is sponsored by McKelvey Insurance Group. If you've ever felt confused or overwhelmed by insurance, McKelvey Insurance Group keeps it simple. They're an independent agency, which means they compare options from multiple providers to find coverage that actually fits you, not just one provider's policy. There's no pressure and no jargon, just honest guidance and real help. Call Evan McKelvey at 618-623-0080 or reach out to us at Pontiffs Anonymous and we'd be happy to connect the dots. They will save you money and they'll save it for you in less than 24 hours. Call Evan. This episode of Needed to Hear That is brought to you by Light Source. What do we need when we're in the dark? Sometimes it's simply just a light source. Back from not Nashville, Asheville.
Asheville, North Carolina.
How are you?
Great. Good to be back. Good to be back in a routine.
I am. We miss you guys when you leave us. Always.
And it's good to be missed.
Had a little bit of a disaster on Friday and had to call your wife, who tracks my wife's phone.
See, that's nice to have that.
Yeah,
It's a safety.
Absolutely.
It's a safety feature.
I like to comment on how well I stayed regulated.
Yeah, congratulations.
When Ashley loses her phone, it is one of my deepest triggers.
Yeah. Never mind the fact that we spent a good portion of our lives not having these things. And now we've just given the keys to the castle over to
Oh boy. You could do a whole series
the world of tech
on screen addictions, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. But it's nice if you're going to have a particularly high need, stressful situation. When Holly and I are in the middle of a 9-hour car ride, that's the time to do it. We're available.
Yeah,
we're there to problem solve. We're there to help. We can take multiple calls. Yeah, there's something about that availability of like, well, listen, we are 8 hours away from home, so if this is a big problem, no problem.
that is a captive audience.
Yeah, we love it.
Except for those Smokies sometimes can mess with the cell phone.
Yeah, they're not great, but it is beautiful. We the conference I gave 2 talks at the Addiction Professionals of North Carolina conference at a place called Lake June, Alaska, which is about a half hour or so from Asheville, from downtown Asheville.
Sounds beautiful.
It's amazing. It's the one of the places that we have been to. I'm very fortunate to give a lot of these talks and presentations where, get flown somewhere or get to travel somewhere. And as good as it is that Lake June, Alaska. It is a gem. It's a beautiful lake. It's got like a 3.5 mile trail around the lake. The hotel is like very unique, very comfortable. And then the conference itself there's kind of a Christian retreat center area that has all the space for the presentations and has an auditorium. And it's really a cool experience. And APNC, so I can use the initials. APNC is a great organization that I get to work with. I do a train the trainer model for them, where they're using my expanding the self of the helper model that I put together, which is for supervisors. So there's a guy named Jeff. Speaking of a good PA guest, a guy named Jeff Hunsucker, who is he's a licensed clinical social worker, but he's also a peer specialist.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, lived experience and a fully licensed therapist.
I'm going to have to write these names down because before we started, you rattled off about 6.
Yeah. He's great. And he's the guy doing the expanding the self of the helper model right now. So he's teaching other supervisors this model, and he is phenomenal. Like, he's a blast. He's
Is he in recovery?
Yeah. And he's like does like competitive barbecue.
Nice.
On the side.
Carolina barbecue.
Yeah. And so
I like that Carolina mustard.
As a person that doesn't eat meat, I've learned a lot about barbecue from Jeff. It's really interesting. But yeah.
He can make you some tofu.
It's all about the seasoning, right?
That's right. Carolina mustard.
But yeah, it's always cool when we go out there because they have great programs. They have a lot of prevention. They have a whole prevention conference out there. They have a bunch of programs on working with colleges. They have, they do a lot of lobbying. They do a lot of like statewide lobbying stuff, policy stuff. The keynote speaker for the conference was Christian Slater.
Oh, wow. A little better than Flava Flav this time.
Flav was good. He was nice, but Christian Slater is solid. He was a
fucking love Christian Slater.
Yeah, he was a very down to earth, laid back guy. Put on a good show, good talk.
Like him in True Romance better than the Loxley brother.
You know, and if you would think, I don't know what his diet and fitness looks like, but you would think he made those movies last week.
Really?
It was. He's exactly.
Maybe I hate him.
Looks exactly the same.
Is he in recovery? No shit. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And he
book him for the show.
Oh man, he'd be a good get. He was really good.
Is he still a heartthrob for the ladies? They always loved that Christian.
You know, he made a joke. Somebody had a picture of him from Heathers.
Okay.
And he was like, you really had to find a picture of me from 30 years ago. And somebody immediately pointed out, bro, you look the same.
Yeah.
Like this picture could have been from a week ago. Like it's really astonishing. But very, very cool, down to earth.
True Romance was a good one.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah.
Tony Soprano
he's interesting in that movie too.
He was a little bit meaner of a character than Tony.
Yeah.
And Gandolfini got it pretty good. I think a corkscrew ended up. Mm-hmm. And he was not kind to that lovely blonde.
Gandolfini, that was maybe his debut in a big way too, was that movie. But I don't know.
He was a meaner version of himself, Eddie. Well, maybe young Tony was that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
Jackie
know if
Jr.
I don't want to misspeak.
They're talking about my hero here.
I don't know if I want to misspeak about his debut. I'd have to ask like the absolute.
Look at my chair.
Oh, there it is, the Sopranos jacket. I'd have to ask like my absolute cinema expert bulldog to see what the James Gandolfini debut was. But yeah, I mean, it was a cool conference. I always get, I gave 2 talks. I gave one. I taught meditation in the morning. So I taught 3 different meditations. I taught a safe space meditation, something called a field of refuge meditation, and then just a basic breathing exercise. And then another presentation on grief, attachment, and addiction.
That's a trifecta.
And that was really, really good. And the best part about it is always the reason why I give talks like that to me is that it's just you start meeting people and everybody that comes up and talks afterward, it's just decades of cool experience and
you
work
love that
in the
human
field.
Being shit too, man. It is,
man, it's just, somebody comes up and starts saying, some guy came up to me and said, man, I was a 23-year-old guy with 2 degrees, no history of addiction, started working in an addiction program that ran concurrently with a methadone program in 1989. And it's just interesting because I'm like, yeah, I was 23 years old and got a job. We're doing addiction treatment I'm not in recovery in the Department of Corrections. And, we had a really cool conversation about kind of, just being educated by the people that we were there to help, and the humility that you have to say, like, I'm not going to know what it's like to be you.
Yeah.
You're going to have to teach me, like, I don't want to pretend like I know you should do this and then you should do this and then you should do this. That's just not good for anybody.
Sure.
And so, yeah, you just meet people with just decades of experience and decades of clean time and in the field and have done every cool training, every cool practice, every kind of spiritual or religious retreat and practice and exercise you can think of. And all that experience is just in the room, and AP&C has done, we've recommended a couple of places for them to host their conference at from where we've traveled in North Carolina. And each place we recommend, Morgan, who is one of the big dogs there, she she always says, "Oh, we used to do it there, but we outgrew it."
I love that Morgan.
Oh yeah, yeah. Morgan's amazing.
She's been over to the house. You guys brought her over when she was visiting. We talked about her before the show. I want to get her on the podcast. Ideally in person, just because it means that we get to hang. Because she's a great hang, but I could always do it remote.
Yeah, we'll fly her in. Yeah, we just get her. You know, she's stayed right by us before, and so we'll get her in. Yeah, it's just really, really good people. That it's a reminder of, you know, you get, and I'm sure between you and I telling stories, and I think some of the stories on PA, right? Like you hear a lot of nightmare stories, you know, a lot of treatment stories, a lot of bad therapy stories, bad treatment stories, bad insurance stories, bad outcomes. And that's all true, right? There isn't anything, nobody's spreading misinformation when they say, here's a bad experience I had in a treatment center, you know, like, but it's every time I go and I get around these, you know, hundreds of helpers, hundreds of providers that come to a conference and spend 3-4 days there, you know, you're just consistently reminded how many people are doing the work. You know, that I say that about even places. You know, you might say, well, I heard that this hospital, this agency, this treatment center is no good. That's okay. It's fine. I mean, everybody's, you know, we're all lucky to be 3 out of 5 stars in life, you know, so
Give me 2.5.
I always try to remember that even if a place is a tough place, right? Maybe their policies aren't great, or it's not a great, I may not even like the protocol or something. I always try to remember, like, there's at least one person in there working their ass off doing good work. You know, if I talk about an agency I worked at and somebody says, well, I hear that agency is no good. And it's like, oh, well, I was there. You know, I was there, and Jessica and Kayla and this person and this person, you know, like, it's like, I don't want to hear that. It's fine for people to have that opinion, but I just think, like, I get really humbled whenever I meet 10 people who are really, really wonderful and really, really excited to talk about the work they do and the people they help. And then somebody goes, oh, well, you know, they work at such and such, and like, that place isn't really good. I'm like, well, I don't know. You got 10 of them here.
Really throwing
they're great.
The baby out with the bathwater here, because we just talked about it with Jacob, the recording before this. And we both know 2 guys that one of them is still working on 7 or 8 years, he had mentioned, of sustained sobriety from a treatment program that I don't necessarily love or follow their ideology, maybe. And they are a little too, I think, heavy-handed with like the Bible Belt, you know. Maybe I was told I can't say it, but it was a little bit more the further right Christianity. But to your point, like, I know people that it's helped and that went there as a last resort, and, you know, I haven't gone and experienced it. I've heard some stories. So to your point, you know, they're not, and like the places you're referring to, you get some places change with clinical directors, or you get a couple new nurses even. I mean, there could be, it all changes, and we kind of cross one off because of one bad experience or one thing we've heard, and it a little unfairly, as I think I'm trying to say. And I do it. I did it. I did it. I did it 30 minutes ago, talking about this particular treatment center. But then I came back around and said, I do know it worked for XYZ, and Jacob said it's worked for a friend of mine. It's not my style. So that's what we're saying. We have maybe a little bit different ideology, but
I agree. I think it's for me, at least, it's an important thing to say out loud. Like, I know one of the things especially when I first started supervising and when I first started teaching, I built way, way too much of what I had to say up based on saying something negative about something else. And I, you know, like I had, if I'm talking, you know, if I'm talking about motivational interviewing or cognitive behavioral therapy or something like that, these forms of therapy, I would have this, kind of eye roll of, oh, well, I'm studying a lot of existential therapy and I work with a lot of Jungian stuff and I prefer psychodynamics. And rather than rest on my own process and finding my own voice, I was building up too much of my own voice on the back of the things that I was negative about. And that's not helpful for anything. It's just in my experience, for me, keeping it on the eye, it was an expression of kind of like an emotional or spiritual immaturity on my part, where I know I'm going to get kind of a laugh out of saying like, oh, let me guess, they're going to do CBT, as if CBT has not alleviated suffering for millions of people in some form or fashion, probably myself included, right? Like the joke about cognitive behavioral therapy, because it looks at how, thinking impacts your behavior, of course. The joke about that is, well, I'm a Buddhist, right? Like having a reasonable skepticism of my thinking is my religion. And then I say, oh, I don't want to hear CBT. It's like, no, this stuff is on its own. It's great. It's great. And I think like, when I hear a lot of talk about how what's good about A is that it's not B, I don't love a lot of that conversation anymore, right? It has its place, but I don't want to hear that Illinois Recovery Center is good because Hope by the Mississippi is bad.
Yeah, right.
Like I don't believe there's a place called Hope by the Mississippi, so I'm trying to make sure I'm not throwing anybody under the bus.
We're not going to get litigated.
Yeah, it's like, I want to hear, at Illinois Recovery Center, here's what we do and here's what we really care about and here's what we strive to be. Right? Sure. Like more than, well, we're not going to be like this other place. Or, a lot of places do this and we don't. Mm-hmm. That's not really helpful for a lot of people. I think that same way, you and I were talking about, tonight, dovetailing into a lot of different conversations about like spirituality. I think that same way about spirituality, right? Like I don't want a discussion of how I navigate things through Eastern philosophy to be built on the back of why Western philosophy is no good.
Sure.
Because that doesn't help anybody.
I've never heard you, in fact, ever say anything bad about any other religion or spirituality. Like I mean, really thinking about it, and I'm not making this up. People think I'm full of shit. No, I really
just like them. I just like them. I think a good here's an example of something that I can be negative about that I've tried to be better about is again coming from the cheap seats, Brene Brown. Coming from the cheap seats, right? I am not going to a 12-step meeting, right? I'm not in recovery, so I'm not going to an AA meeting. I'm not going to an NA meeting. I say relatively frequently, I think the 12 steps on paper are a pretty cool change model. When you look at the tenets of it, it's like, yeah, this is a good change model. This is cool. You can work with this. There's a lot of meat on the bone there. But the most frequent thing that you would hear about somebody that has ambivalence about a 12-step meeting is, I don't know about that God stuff.
Yeah.
Or they're going to go in there and they're going to tell me all that God stuff. And I know a lot of people that kind of eye roll when they hear that, right? Some of that might fall under this category of like some terminal uniqueness, right? Like that works for everybody else, but it's not going to work for me kind of language. And that might be true. Somebody's ego is probably in the conversation. I can be quick to be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to hear this. You don't want to go in there because they're going to talk about God. It could be really helpful. But then I think, wait a second. Somebody's ambivalence about going into a room is they don't know whether or not they want to hear about a higher power. Well, none of us understand a higher power, right? It's literally the whole concept is that it's a mystery beyond human capacity to understand, right? And entire religions would never say the word God, right? Like the mystery, the unknown, the things that are larger, the fabric that has been woven together by something bigger than all of us is this massive mystery. And then somebody says, well, I don't know if I want to go in there and talk about God. And we're like, why not? Well, yeah, talk about jumping into the deep end, right? Like somebody's probation officer might want them to go to a 12-step meeting and they don't really want to talk about God. And we're like, well, you should just go. And it's like, you should just go and ignore the fact that the single most confusing mystery in the history of sentient beings is listed first at the top of the page. And then someone is going to talk to you with a certain amount of confidence of the existence of this mystery.
Uh-huh.
And you, as a person who's already drinking from the fire hose of a bunch of new emotions, are going to be like, cool, I can vibe with this. Like, that's so dismissive of us, to just be like, oh yeah, you should just, you don't know what you think about a higher power yet. Well, you should just go and figure it out. I think that's hard. And I don't think that it still may not be a great excuse, but I think we should at least acknowledge, like, well, yeah, that is hard. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. When people ask me about Buddhism, sometimes people will be like, so do you think that guy with the big belly is God? No,
I'm being good here.
That's not exactly
Holly
how
was
we do
waiting
it.
for me to say something, and I'm not going to do it.
That's not how we do it. And so I thought
my grandpa George had one of those big Buddhas and always rub his belly for good luck.
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not self-conscious about it at all. I don't know.
He was not on Zepbound.
I don't know how he got there, but he got there.
Oh boy, if we could be more like him.
Yeah. And I just think, the Buddha with the big belly is Hotei, Hotei, is a Hotei Buddha.
I feel like you've, in settings where I've maybe made a crass or inappropriate joke, you've taught me this.
Yeah, and so the reason why, so sometimes he's seated, right? You see him a lot. That's the belly that you're most likely to rub as he's sitting there. He's got a big smile on his face.
Big smile, big old smile.
The robe is open.
Yeah.
Yeah, the kimono is open. And
ear to ear grin.
Yeah, and then sometimes he's standing. Usually if you see him standing, he's got maybe he's celebrating, might have his hands in the air. Sometimes it's just kind of like an exuberant, overtime win, hands in the air.
All right.
Other times you'll see him with a bag over his shoulder. And the reason why he's big and the reason why he has a bag over his shoulder is he is symbolic of the fact that you already have everything you need. And so, of course, throughout history, if somebody was able to be in a bigger body, that meant they were not starving.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the bag represents that you carry everything that you need, right? He doesn't need anything else. And so it's always that is the ultimate expression of luck, right? Is the recognition that I already have everything I need, right? A difficult expression of luck is I hope I get lucky and get more than I already have. But true luck is, wow, I already have everything I need. What am I going to do with that information? So you rub his belly not to hit on the slots. You rub his belly to hopefully become fortunate enough to realize that your fortune is already inside you.
Okay.
And
I was doing it the wrong way.
Well, I mean, if you're rubbing his belly with the hope that dinner would be good, that's probably fine. That he wouldn't be upset.
Some team would cover the spread.
Yeah. And then they didn't, and it was suddenly his fault.
I'm happy with my Bengals, though.
Yeah, that was a good get.
So I remember you've said this before that, you've been studying Buddhism for 20 years. Mm-hmm. Teachers that have been studying it and teaching it humbly for ×2. And none of you consider yourselves experts on this stuff. You've said this humbly before, in conversation. And is it always seeking wisdom, or is it just what you said earlier? It's beyond our comprehension.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know much. I have as much knowledge as I've been able to get in 20 or 25 years, but I don't know much. And the second that somebody maybe pokes a hole in something I'm saying, that's all right. I'm not going to pretend to know everything, but that spiritual humility is a way that we get around sometimes. Like, you want to make sure that you're not doing a lot of what we call spiritual bypassing, right? You don't want to be somebody who's a Buddhist who's like, oh, I don't get attached to things because I'm a Buddhist. It's like, oh, you're attached to something, man. You're attached to people knowing that you don't get attached.
Sure.
Like that is a very important thing. Like, and you don't want a false humility either, but there is something important about if you're going to entertain the mystery, whether that be the mystery of the cosmos or the mysteries of the universe or the mysteries of a benevolent creator or whatever, if you're going to be able to tolerate mystery, the primary way that we tolerate mystery is some form of humility. You have to know what you don't know.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that's so hard. I mean, think about, we were talking about the 12 steps, right? Think about the language, right? Like powerless, right? There's a powerlessness is discussed. Surrender is discussed. Like,
these are big words.
It's terrifying. It's terrifying, and I think there's a lot of times where when we start talking about spirituality or we start talking about people maybe having a spiritual or religious practice, we skip over the parts of it that are going to be inherently terrifying. And we soften that language with like, well, of course this is going to be hard or it's going to be difficult. It's like, no, it's going to be terrifying. I was talking to a therapist in that I'm hopefully going to be doing a workshop with in Mexico City. I'm not going to be in Mexico City. We're going to be on Zoom, but he's in Mexico City.
Yeah, that Mexico City is up there. I didn't realize that until I think they talked about playing a baseball game. They played a baseball game in Mexico City, and you think Coors is. I think it's way higher.
Oh yeah, the
ball
would go through someone. Yeah, and we were talking about I won't get too far into the weeds, but we were talking about the concept of a labyrinth, the archetype or the symbol of a labyrinth, and that in that archetype, historically, there is the story of the Minotaur, who's like half bull and half man, who is like devours people that are in the labyrinth. And this therapist I was talking to, he was saying like an important part about working with this kind of figure, with this kind of practice of the labyrinth, is the Minotaur is not like a scary thing that you're like trying to dodge and get away from. Like the Minotaur represents like terror, right? Like a full on destructive feeling of terror, and that is why it is a half bull half man figure that devours people, right? Like it's terrifying. There's a lot of I practice Tibetan Buddhism and in a school called Vajrayana Buddhism. There's a lot of figures in Tibetan Buddhism, in Hinduism, that have very scary imagery. You'll see Kali in Hinduism usually will have like a severed head. Vajrayogini in Tibetan Buddhism will wear like a necklace of 50 severed heads, or there will be like a body at her feet. It's scary. Sure. Right? Like it's scary. And it's,
like the guy from Indiana Jones that rips the heart out.
It's this terror, but symbolically, right? The severed head is like when you are removed from the illusion of thought, right? Like it's to kind of give severity in the symbolism, right? Like, well, yeah, that is the ultimate representation of being removed from all these thoughts that make everything more difficult. Sure, it's just not having a head, right? Like, and so like these things are symbolic, right? These are symbolic. There isn't anybody who is kind of
ancient lobotomy.
Yeah, it's and then wearing the necklace. She when my teacher, a gentleman named Justin von Boydash, when he was teaching me about
Dutch fellow.
And from Brooklyn.
Oh, great.
Yeah, from Brooklyn. Yeah, he was teaching me about Vajrayogini, and I've had the honor of learning some pretty formal practices regarding that figure and some meditative skills. And he was like, "Well, you bring somebody like Vajrayogini into it because she really brings the ruckus."
Nice.
That she brings this kind of like this ring of fire concept where it's, a lot of spiritual practices, they they burn everybody that tries to step into them, right? Because it's hot. It is difficult. That's, we're talking about going into a AA or an NA room for the first time and using terms like powerlessness or surrender or unmanageable. That's fire, right? That is very, very, very scary. And when we act kind of flippant, like, well, you just got to go in there and they're going to talk about God and they're going to talk about a higher power, but take what you want and leave the rest. We're neglecting this piece of the practice that is this vulnerability is terrifying. And if somebody is going to commit to a spiritual practice or a religious practice or anything that is larger than them, there are going to be pieces of that practice that are terrifying. And that speaks to the level of commitment. It's not like, Lord knows, it's not like the imagery in Christianity is particularly pleasant either.
Shit.
It's
fucking crucifixion.
Yes. And then you think about the you're gonna hate me for making this reference because it's the kind of thing that I always want to talk about, and nobody is really that interested in, is that the crucifix, for instance, is also a representation of human wholeness, right? Because it is a cross, it is an intersection, and so when you draw a circle around the cross, you have the whole 4 quadrants, right? You have wholeness, and that's why it's like a cross is like one of the most common symbols in the history of humanity. It is just like at the center of the cross, right? That is the intersection of wholeness.
Interesting.
And so
I'm still awake.
Yeah, that was it. There's other forms of it.
Let me ask.
we won't get into, but
let me ask you this. So you talk about these words like surrender and powerless and how they're so scary, and it tracks because I remember the day that I checked into treatment. I posted on Facebook. People do that. Social media, not you.
Yeah. Sounds terrible.
It is really. But for the sake of this conversation, I posted scariest day of my life. And I oftentimes tell people that it is the scariest day of your life, and it's very, very scary. Yet you can be delivered through that. Those words are scary, but they are also so fucking liberating when you and walk through it and acknowledge that you're powerless, surrender to this, quit trying to hold the acorn and squeeze this thing of control that you have none of. But they are, like, as you talk about, that literally is what I posted, and it was probably the scariest day of my life.
Yeah.
Feelings were coming.
I was part of a Buddhist temple on the Missouri side for a while, and I remember I thought this was a great idea, but we were approached to be part of. There was a church in town that was they were doing like what they called a spiritual scavenger hunt, and I thought it was a really great idea. I'm sure people do it all the time. This is the one time I heard of it, where they, over the course of like a Saturday, people were going to go and they were supposed to go and get like a tarot reading and do a 15-minute Buddhist meditation and, walk a labyrinth and,
do a couple Our Fathers. Are we checking all the boxes here?
And so they were basically reaching out to see if we would kind of block off like noon to 4 on a Saturday to just do a meditation every 15 minutes on a loop for people that might show up and be like, oh, we're doing this scavenger hunt. And I thought it was great. I thought it was such a cool
That's like right up your
that was such a cool idea, and we were meeting about it, and I remember there was a lot of resistance in the room, and this was a long time ago, so I was way more full of kind of piss and vinegar when it came to some of this Buddhist stuff, and
which is so funny that you say that. I've never known you ever to be full of piss and vineger.
I was very like,
unless it's a toxic masculinity.
Yeah, I don't do well with that. I was just so like, yeah, let's do it. Right? Like, let's do it. And there were a couple of people in the room with more experience than me that were very hesitant. And I look back on their hesitance as very astute now, because their thing was like, you never really know how somebody is going to react to sitting in their own mind for 15 minutes. And do we really want to just do 12 to 12:15, okay, see ya, 12:15 to 12:30, okay, see ya? Like, do we really want to offer it that way? And again, I use that example because I'm still pretty confident that it would have been fine, right? And we also, could have, you can do some pretty really soft, easy, gentle meditations, which is kind of what everybody agreed upon, and kind of how we went from there. But it was a good reminder, especially in hindsight, of the respect that we want to offer somebody sitting with themselves, somebody having feelings for the first time, somebody engaging the idea that there are things larger than themselves, maybe for the first real raw time. And I don't know, myself included, I don't know that we always do a great job of that because, like you just said it, delivery is available, right? So you're on the other end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Not really, right? Like none of us are finished products, right? But that
it's been a day to day, one day at a time.
I feel a sense of knowing when it comes to some of the spirituality and religion that I've been able to practice and been exposed to, right? Like, so I have this sense of like, oh, isn't this the best? Isn't this incredible? Read this book, listen to this, do something really exciting, like sit with your eyes closed and breathe. Oh, it's incredible. Like I have this salesman's pitch of confidence to it. And the more that confidence shows up, the more that like, this is amazing shows up, the further removed we get from really respecting, this is scary.
Mm-hmm.
This is like really terrifying. Like, hey, everyone, let's sit in silence for 15 minutes. Don't worry, return to your breath is scary. The Buddhist meditation that I do at at the coffee shop is not long. Right? Like it's, very, very specifically, it is, I usually tell a Buddhist story or teach something about Buddhism. So Four Noble Truths, emptiness, kind of these core concepts of Buddhism. And then we sit and follow our breath. And it isn't 15 or 20 minutes. Like it's a short meditation because anybody can do longer. You can go on a 10-day retreat if you want. And some people find out what meditation is and they go on a 10-day retreat right away. And maybe love it, right? Or maybe head for the hills day 4 because they're like, nope, that's enough. But I do think there is something really important about, we start thinking about, well, how are you going to kind of create conditions for you to have a healthy inner life, for you to have a healthy connection to things that are larger than you? Like, how do you create those conditions? Maybe it's going to church, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's devotional, maybe it's just being outside.
Yeah.
You don't have to call it anything. I've talked to plenty of people that are like, I don't do that meditation stuff. I just like to sit and breathe. Great. Sit and breathe. Like, don't name it. It's not called meditation anyways. It would have been the Buddha was writing in Sanskrit. There was they weren't calling it that, So I do just really, I myself included, I just think a lot of times the world can do a better job of respecting how scary it is to enter a spiritual space, a religious space, a change-oriented space, even something like, we talk about, people will say, well, it's very healing to go in nature. Be out in nature. That's like very healing. It's very helpful. I couldn't agree more, right? Like I
feel that way until the fucking mosquitoes.
Yeah, I love being outside. I love my favorite form of running is trail running. I love being out on the trails.
You like to swim.
I love to swim. I love open water swimming. I absolutely do. But like, if somebody says, okay, everybody tells me I need to connect to something bigger to myself and I just need to go outside. And they go outside and they get a real bad sunburn, right? Like, that's game over,
Right,
right?
right.
Like that's terrible, right? It's like, we forget all the different kind of layers of salve that somebody needs to have available to them to try something new. And when it's something like a spiritual practice or a spiritual discipline, we have to be all the more respectful of it, right? Like we have to be all the more aware of how terrifying that is. One of the, the beautiful things that I learned in Tibetan Buddhism, there's a lot of visualization. You do a lot of kind of visualizing this figure in front of you or on the crown of your head or in this kind of field of refuge. So that you can really connect to the embodied experience of these symbols. And one of the figures that I have learned a lot about was he's a medicine Buddha, so like a healing Buddha named Yutuk. And I remember learning all of these things about Yutuk, sitting with this figure, this guided visualization, what he's, because it's all symbolism. It's like, what is in his left hand? What's in his right hand? What is he sitting on? What is he wearing? You do all this visualization. And I remember my teacher saying, if you're going to go through all the trouble of inviting that kind of presence into your heart, I hope you're going to let him do some work. And it was such an interesting reminder of like, that is a very gentle discussion of surrender. Like don't do a very detailed and committed practice of connecting to something larger than yourself and then still think you're alone doing all the work, right? Like I'm not envisioning Yutuk next to me so that he can be like, keep doing what you're doing, Chaz. Doing great. You seem like a nice guy. Instead it's just like, oh yeah, what kind of, if I want to connect to something larger than myself, what is the feeling state? What is the thing that I want, the presence that I really want to invite into my life, right? What does a healing presence feel like? One of the people that works at the shrine was talking about how an article that came out from a priest a few years ago called The Sacred Practice of Presence. And it was just a discussion on how just being present with someone is enough of a practice. I think this is its own kind of important conversation, especially with a lot of the parents that you have on PA and stuff, and the moms that were at the gathering a couple weeks ago, where this particular writing was probably really geared for people in a caregiving role.
Okay.
Which is a deeply spiritual role, right? Like, I mean, there is almost all of your major religions are speaking to this do unto others life of service, and when somebody is thrust into a life of service that they didn't have any preparation for, or they didn't ask for, there's a lot of reckoning to deal with there.
Yeah.
I love being a therapist. I say it every time we're sitting here. I chose it.
Right.
Like there was not a lottery.
Yeah.
And somebody said, you're going to go be a therapist. I chose it. I go to an office every day and do a job that I chose. When somebody is in a caregiving role, or somebody maybe feels that they are responsible for the feeling state of others, that is likely something that they were thrust into. And that in and of itself creates a real sense of lack sometimes, right? Because you're providing a lot of care and you're trying to do a lot, and you might be taking a lot of responsibility for something, and it's not getting better. Maybe it won't, right? A caregiver who's dealing with like chronic illness, or maybe somebody in the dying process, it's not going to get better. Somebody who is the primary parent or support for somebody who in mental health or addiction, it might get better, and then it might get worse, and then it might get better, and then it might get worse, and so on and so forth. And so what it means is people in a caregiving role, they start moving towards every light they can find, right? Like, how can I do more? How can I get more resources, more knowledge, more information, more skill, more strategy, more people, more cavalry? all the religions, all the gods, all the deities, all the prophets, all the saints, right? Let's
Every
bring
arrow
them,
in their quiver.
yeah, let's bring them all into the room. And that's beautiful, right? That's
Sure.
cool. That's cool as hell. But it's also motivated by this fear that just like your presence would never be enough. And I just really, really loved that discussion of like the sacred practice of presence.
That I want some of these moms that have been thrust into this role because they've lost a child to addiction or suicide, that are now, they can't get out of bed without wanting to help other moms. And to your point, them sitting with another mom that's got a kid that's struggling with addiction or mental health, just sitting there and being present with them is enough.
Yeah.
And it's some real warrior shit, in my opinion, when your whole world was completely lights out by, if it was thinking of Julie, a friend of mine, who's been on the podcast that lost her son. And speaking of that particular mom, last week at Underground, a lot of the moms couldn't make it because they had another funeral of another kid, 21 years old, that died by suicide in St. Louis, and they were all going to they had met the mom and the kid, and they had all gone to the funeral to be there, just to sit. And these are moms that are going through it because, like what you said, we're thrust into something. You got pretty deep there, and I had a joke, so I want to go back to it.
Sure.
You were talking about the wise, who you were like, let's do it, let's do this 15 minutes, and the guy that was really astute, maybe the older bull. You heard about the old bull and the young bull?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with the cows down the hill.
Mm-hmm. There we go.
And he said, the young bull said, let's run down there and mate with a cow. I'm cleaning it up.
You're doing great so far.
And the old Bill said, let's walk down there and we'll mate with them all.
Yes.
Yeah, but he used different language.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I'm doing good.
Yeah. Week 13.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, that's my teacher has always used the language of, you move slow, you get there fast. Of just, somebody just brought it up to me today, this really great story from Francis Weller, who I've mentioned on here before, that wrote Wild Edge of Sorrow, that when Francis Weller met his like clinical supervisor, his mentor as a therapist, that the guy had on the kind of table next to his chair, he just had like a rock that was sitting there. And he said to Francis Weller, he said, one thing you got to know about me is that's my clock. I work on geologic time. Nothing moves fast in here, man. And that just kind of there's
such wiser way to teach the lesson of the old and young bull.
Like it's a story that not only do I think is like really, really cool and really, really moving. I'm not sure how I would feel if I was Francis Weller in that story, and I'd be like, did this guy just point to this rock? But I do like it, so maybe I would be a sucker for it. But I think that that's one of those things when you start thinking about the vulnerability of a spiritual practice, you are faced with this, so if I do this every day forever, I'll feel a little better. It's like, it's not a great sales pitch, right? Especially coming out of something like addiction, where it's like, if I do this, I feel great.
Yeah.
Or if I do this, if I meditate, I'll be able to tolerate the deep suffering of existence a little bit more, is just not a great sales pitch.
No.
There is just a real difficulty to asking for that initial commitment that we disregard because we have the confidence of experience. I've been meditating my whole adult life, and it's an irreplaceable part of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think is really important is in the years that I have studied and practiced Buddhism, I've done countless different kinds of
Sure.
meditation. It's something too where when you have nothing to grab onto, you want the first thing that you grab onto to be the last thing. You want it to be like, okay, if I find my thing, that will be it. If I and then
Just
for
be
some
a step.
yeah, and for some people that is true, right? If somebody goes to, if they go to mass on Sunday and they're like, this is home, and then 60 years later, that's the where they roll their casket out of, like that's beautiful. My grandparents had that, the three grandparents that I had a relationship with, all went to church every Sunday until the end of their lives.
That was their
yeah. And no frills.
Sure.
Right? Like, I mean, normal blue collar people that just went on Sundays. That's something that I just think is so, what I know now about religion and spirituality, I just think, God, that's just cool. Like they just went, they were there. It provided the structure to their day that they needed. None of my grandparents were going to sit down and teach me some theological lesson about anything, but what they were going to teach me was what it means to show up. And that is the sacred practice of presence, right? Like if Grandpa Frankie is going to be in the third row every Sunday, Grandpa Frankie's in the third row every Sunday. Not he's going to be in the third row and then he's going to get up and do a reading and then he's going to do song and then he's going to, like, that's all great too, but he wasn't going to do that. You weren't going to know he was there. You weren't going to know Grandma was there, right? But they were going to be in and out. When my grandma Frankie passed, this is something that I think is like these little nuggets of wisdom that show up in different spaces. The priest that did her funeral, he didn't know her because he was new. Okay. He was new to the parish. And I think, this is an example of why things could go real bad or real good, that he didn't know her. And if there's way too much of his ego in the room, he's going to lean on the righteousness of God, right? He's going to say everything about where she is and where she went because God is good. Which is fine, right? But what he said that I thought was really beautiful is he said that every human life is a wave out in the ocean that starts out in the middle of the ocean and then makes its way to shore. And that he met my grandma right before her wave crashed to shore. That he didn't know her in the ocean. He didn't know the swells and storms that blew her every which way, every which direction. He didn't know her as a mom or as a grandma, that he only knew her right before she came to the shore and was reabsorbed back into the ocean with everybody else. And that is it to me. That's a cool story of the kind of humility that we were talking about, right? Like that, just like, if somebody was this was a Catholic church. I don't practice Catholicism.
Neither do I. I'm recovering Catholic.
I do have a real warmth for that level of humility, that in that moment, a religious figure said something really kind and really humble and really thoughtful. And I still remember it.
Yeah.
And that could, if that goes the other way, right? What am I doing? Maybe I'm telling some story about how, and then these priests, they know this, that, or the other, these Buddhists, they think they're not attached to nothing. And that kind of negativity can take in instead this really beautiful symbol of like, hey, I didn't really know her when she was out there being moved around by life and every storm and every change and every shift in the weather. I knew her right before she came to shore. And that was a nice experience. And now she's back out in the ocean with the rest of us,
That there's been some I've heard some good ones from the priests before. Yeah. So I respect absolutely what they do. That's That's good. I like that too, because it's super humble. It's acknowledging that there was a whole life that he didn't really get to witness, and in a way of, it would have been a gift to witness all of that. When you talk about, when you were shooting me a note that wanted to talk about spirituality, you did talk about having, and this goes to what your grandpa and grandma are doing, is having our rituals, or to use I don't know if it's a Christian term or not, but the daily bread, right?
Sure.
Whatever our rituals are to keep us. I mean, that's a form of spirituality in and of itself.
I love the daily sacred. I love a small ritual that is a reminder that all things are eligible for depth and spirituality. When we get into the language of ritual, or I've even talked about like initiation on here, these rituals become, I think we naturally move towards the elaborate, right? We start thinking about, like, if I say, like, will you perform some kind of ritual to navigate the recovery from trauma or loss or grief, we start thinking about like a Viking pyre, like some kind of large, elaborate ritual. But what I really mean when I think about like sacred rituals, right? Like, my hero is Mr. Rogers, right? Like, it's important that he change those shoes. He puts that sweater on, and if he didn't, you'd be like, whoa, nothing is okay right now. And that kind of ritual, like that to me is a spiritual experience. You have these rituals, and you have them, right? Like you have them, and they are important, and they are not just like these little anxiety preventers, right? Like, they might be part of your day that you could consider and connect to as sacred.
Mm-hmm.
Like my cup of coffee in the morning is. Is it caffeine addiction? Sure. But
I've seen you take decaf.
Yeah, I will have decaf all day because I really just want to stop by and hopefully see Hannah at Pour, or see Jeff or Zach, or just say hi to somebody that I'm familiar with, and to see that is a very, very big part of my day. Like, there's a very sacred experience there to me it is communal, and it is human, and it is relational, and I think about it in a similar vein to watching Mr. Rogers change his shoes, to let everybody know that, hey, we're home.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're settling in. A story that I probably used way too much, that is not a daily ritual, but I think it's like a really interesting story, is I have always really liked John Wooden, the old UCLA coach, right? The old UCLA men's basketball coach. And, John Wooden died, I believe, at 99 years old. He stayed very close friends with a lot of his players, good, bad, or indifferent, Kareem being one of them. Kareem wrote a book about his relationship with John Wooden. It's really, really good. John Wooden was
Kareem. You're not talking about Robbie Avila from the Cream, Abdul.
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, he was great.
Wooden, I believe John Wooden outlived his wife by about 25 years. And they said that he like laid her pajamas out in the bed next to him every night.
Jesus.
But
you better be doing that.
I plan on it. There's very little chance that I outlive my beautiful wife, but
those jams better be laid out.
Yeah, one of the things that he did, a thing of legend that Wooden did, was, you have to look at the context. So a lot of people would say John Wooden's the greatest college basketball coach ever. He coached Hall of Famers like Bill Walton and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And when he was winning at UCLA, that's the best program in the country, right?
Sure.
That's where you want to be at. And so Kareem Abdul-Jabbar tells a story of being a guy who has decided to go play at UCLA. So he's going to go play at the best school that there is for the best coach that there is. And he's going out there first day of camp in the off season. And he knows that, there better be some wisdom imparted by this great sage of a coach that has become the best in the world. And that the first day of camp every year, the first thing that Wooden did is he had everybody sit down and he showed them the right way to put on their socks and their shoes so they wouldn't get blisters. And that he was very particular about it, that there was and he said, I'm not going to have guys that have to come out of the game in the fourth quarter because they left a crease in their sock and now they got a wrinkle. And that it was just telling the story, right? It's kind of laughable, right? All of us know how to put our shoes on and put our socks on. And most of us did it today without incident.
Sure.
I am fascinated with the part of the story that becomes how no one would know what to do if they went to the first day of camp and John Wooden didn't show everybody how to put their socks and shoes on. That, all those years, it's like, Bill Walton talks about it too, that he'd go back to visit. And that's what, if that didn't happen,
there was something wrong.
Something's wrong, something's wrong. And that kind of ritual, I also think, and of course I'm a sucker for this, I also love how simple and gentle it is. Like,
Sure.
I
Mr. Rogers shit right there, man.
I don't want your feet to hurt, man.
No.
Jesus didn't want your feet to be dirty.
I'm thinking of some rituals around my house. It would be nice if the dishwasher was loving.
Well, poor Ashley does not deserve.
I love her rituals.
Ire.
In the morning, she wakes up with the doggies, lets them out. She makes Charlie's breakfast.
Yeah.
I love those.
The coffee
rituals.
is brewing. Yeah. Well, and
if that doesn't happen, the house is fucked.
I sit here and speak on how much I can obsess about like the daily sacred, because I really can. It really is like my favorite. I just love thinking about like what are these little anchors throughout your day that really show that you're a spiritual being. And both of our wives are a great example. Holly is deeply spiritual in her ability to ritualize, in the way that we have built a life around these small moments and small practices where we want to do the same thing every day. We want to go for a walk at night. Even the little phrases you might say to the people closest to you or to a partner that are the kind of like loving inside joke of a relationship, right? That's a sacred moment, right? Because that might be something that you don't have with anybody else, and so there's something sacred there. Holly is somebody that can build something that maybe we would dismiss as mundane into a really beautiful daily kind of practice that then becomes just like a really important spiritual inside joke, like Ashley is very similar in that way, right? Like you're married to somebody who has a very devout simplicity to her spirituality, right? That like Ashley is no frills, right? Like she shows up, she knows how to show up, she understands how important a small comfort is for somebody. Holly is the same way. Both of them understand these comforts, right? They understand these things that they might seem kind of minuscule, but then try not having them.
If she doesn't get up in the morning and get her, she's about 30 minutes of quiet and like with her Bible and her devotional, like her Jesus time. Mm-hmm. And I've interrupted it before with
I would imagine 3 to 5 days a week, but sure.
And if it's not me, Gloria wants to be in there with her.
Sure.
But it's really, it grounds, it's a foundational part of her day.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
I see people that, even people that talk about gardening, watering plants, those kinds of things, where that's a sacred practice, right? And you don't do that just in the name of having control over nature, right? You aren't doing that because you are just going to get a stranglehold on whether or not this plant lives or dies, right? Like it is an opportunity to appreciate the invisible growth that is a spiritual practice, right? Because that's what most spirituality is and what most religious practice is. And I'm talking inner practices, right? Like I'm not talking the prescriptive, this is how the world should live, this is how everybody else should live, this is the rule, right? Most of your spiritual practices, your religious practices, where the idea or the concept of faith comes in is because you can't really see it. You can't see the ways that this sacred practice is impacting your life every day. You water a plant when it needs to be watered, and the next thing you know, you go, damn, that's getting big.
You were talking about it earlier about how, how uncomprehendable faith in God really is in all the religions and how God is, and that's what you're talking about now. That's why the word faith is having the belief in the uncomprehendable and unseen. I mean, that's the definition of that word. So
yeah, if you're somebody that has a daily centering prayer practice or a meditation practice, or you're somebody that goes outside on the front step of your house and takes a few deep breaths. If you're doing that kind of stuff every day, the growth is imperceptible, right? You don't wake up one day and say, I have become a profound spiritual presence. You just don't really do that, but suddenly, right? Like you're feeling a little bit more grounded. You're feeling a little bit more maybe curious about what the next thing you want to learn or try is. And that is also when you start to notice that some of your favorite books they're becoming a little bit tattered, because you've been through them so many times, not because Meadow and Gloria chewed them up, but
that's my case. That's what happened.
My favorite book is Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, and it's a short book. It's 130 pages, I read Siddhartha every year. And there's that's it. Once a year, doesn't take very long. Like I said, it's not a very long.
Ending
book.
Doesn't change, does it?
No, it's same thing every time. But there are just certain aspirational things in there that I really, are kind of part of my inner mission statement. Can I listen as intently as Vasudeva, the boatman? Can I be as kind of a friend as Govinda, making sure that Siddhartha doesn't get disrupted in his sleep? There's this devout opportunity. There is just like an abundance of simplicity out there that can really just kind of warms you from the inside. But it's not something you're going to perceive, right? It's not something that you're going to be like, this has completely changed me in every way, right? Like in some cellular way. It's just the idea of being devout in this kind of sacred approach to daily simplicity. Even with like, I talk to people sometimes about like a kind of a catchphrase in the therapy world is like coping skills, right? People say like, well, what are your coping skills? I don't know that I say that phrase very often, but like what I talk about with coping skills is that there's kind of like three layers, right? There is one layer of coping that is like going on a trip or having time off or getting away.
Picnic table.
Yeah. And that's not super, it's not super available. It's available. We go to Table Rock once a year, right?
I can't wait.
It's not supremely available. And to some people, depending on resources, it's not available at all. So there's this kind of like upper echelon of coping that is, can you get away, right? It's the spiritual equivalent of like, are you going to go on a 10-day retreat? Or are you going to go on a pilgrimage? That kind of thing. Then there's kind of this middle layer of coping that is a lot of the stuff that's available pretty frequently, right? So that's even like your hobbies, right? Like if you have a hobby, hopefully you can engage in that hobby 2, 3, 4, 5 times in a week. But those are your distractions too, right? They have meaning, but they are things that can kind of like get you out of your own head, can kind of get you into the moment. But they're not available all the time, right? Like if you're in a meeting at work, you can't do yoga in the middle of that meeting. So you might go to a yoga class 2, 3 times a week, but it's not always available. And then there's the kind of coping that is always available, and that is the least interesting, which is like you can breathe. You can have a mantra that you say to yourself. You can do centering prayer. You can say a little prayer, right? What's the Anne Lamott? Help, thanks, and wow, right? Those are the 3 prayers that you need, right?
All right.
Like those kinds of things.
I like that.
Where you get into the realization that you probably need all 3 of those layers of practice, right? You need to be able to get away sometimes. You need to have some interesting things that you can focus on without a lot of effort.
Sure.
Like a hobby, like something you really enjoy. And then kind of the less interesting but always available are these kind of daily sacred practices,
Yeah, I'm really going to refocus on some of, I do a couple, but you're getting me fired up to want to really lean into a couple more that fit my daily life. And if I have to hear one more time how many fucking irons I have in the fire,
sure,
I'm going to internally combust.
If I have to hear one more time how many irons I have in the fire, I'm going to get mad and continue to have the same number of irons in the fire.
Maybe put some more in there.
That'll show them.
Yeah. I told Ashley I'll get another one.
Yeah.
I'll show her.
Lucky her.
Chazzy, this is great tonight. Before we go, 2 things. All right. I want to start with you. Something coming up at the shrine. Let's tell our audience about it. It's not before this drops, right?
No.
I make that mistake often.
No, it's
do a master's review show on and it drops the Monday after the tournament.
Yeah,
people can take your
you don't have to worry about that. So in a couple of weeks, let's see, today's the 20th.
And I'll post this on our socials.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You can reach out to Chaz at C-Pondoff.
May 7th is a Thursday.
Ooh.
May 7th.
May 8th, Buff Bagwell's going to be in town.
Oh, good. Well, maybe if he comes in town on May 7th, he can come
bring
to the
him
shrine.
Out. Sure.
At the King's House. We're doing a day of reflection. And so from 10 to 3, I'm going to lead kind of a retreat on the concept of archetypes, which are, figures that have been present throughout all human history in the collective. So the mother, the father, the king, the queen, there's all kinds of archetypes. But mostly it's going to be on the work of Carl Jung and another one of your favorites, a guy named Richard Rohr. We're going to kind of bring their work in, and it's really geared towards if you want to learn a little more about how to connect to these inner practices that are, they've been with all of humankind forever, that there's always been this, what we would call like a mystical experience, right? The mystics were people who connected to their immediate experience, right? And so if you want to, it's a lot of, we'll do some meditation.
Love that Richard Rohr.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. We'll
Did
do
J.D. Vance ask about his theology too?
No, I don't know that they've crossed paths. I don't know that they get along. Right. But we're gonna work. We're gonna do some meditation. We're gonna do some just kind of looking at reflecting on what I refer to as the energies that move us all. I'm referring to it on the flyer that way. Clearly, I did not create that phrase. But there are these energies. You are moved. If you have a lot of irons in the fire, right? Like that's a lot of what we would consider almost like Zeus energy, where Zeus has to make a lot of decisions and a lot of collaboration, but he's also like very aggressive and does not like to be crossed.
I feel you're making. I've never been. You can call me Tony Soprano or Zeus. And
yeah,
that'd be the best compliment in the world. I'm going home and I'm saying, hey, Ashley, Zeus.
Zeus makes big decisions.
The father of Apollo.
Zeus makes big decisions.
Have you seen Die Hard 3?
Yes.
He tells Samuel, he kept calling him "Hey Zeus."
Yeah.
He goes, "Hey Zeus, it's Zeus."
Yeah.
He goes, "I thought you said "Hey Zeus." He goes, "The guy said "Hey Zeus."
Like
"Hey Zeus,"
like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Yeah.
Blinken. Hey, Blinken. Are you saying Abe Lincoln?
Sorry.
So
May 7th.
May 7th from 10 to 3, Panoff will post the registration and stuff on the socials. We'll get him all that.
Yes.
It's just something that I am really looking forward to. Lunch is included.
Wow.
At the shrine. That's no joke.
Yeah. I love a good shrine.
But yeah, it's just kind of a cool
fried chicken.
I don't know. Not for me.
Well, sure.
But
you don't eat anything with a face, but I
no.
do.
It's going to be a cool opportunity to it'll be a very simple day. It's not an academic approach to things. It's that I believe deeply in people's ability to find like a very mystical and deep experience in the now and in the simplicity of their day-to-day life. And I like to talk about these topics through that lens that, yeah, we're going to talk Carl Jung and we're going to talk Richard Rohr, but it's mostly as just kind of an entry point to reflecting on your own experience. I'm just excited about it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Me too. I'm going to try to go. That's not Screech, I don't think, on the railroad. If you hear the train and the...
Could be. I hope he's okay.
I think his dog's very sick. End of the road for Jimmy Johnson. So I'm worried about him. And he don't do grief well either.
No, it's a hard one.
Speaking of grief, I want to end on this. I want to dedicate this show to an absolute hero in my life, and warrior, and it's just not fair, and it's so fucked up. But I don't know if you remember, I've talked a couple times with you and Holly, and one of my kid I grew up with in Villa Madero, longest friends, Kevin Weimerslag and his wife Adrian lost their 16-year-old daughter.
Oh my gosh!
She had leukemia for 10 years, Elsa. And remember the last home game of last year, I meant to meet them at the Blues game, and the Blues were having Elsa and their family and down on the ice afterwards. And Elsa got sick and had to go to Children's, and I stayed with Adrian and Claire and Eli. And Eli's a little he's a little sniper for those Merrimack Sharks right now.
All right.
So keep an eye on him. But we went down and Braden Shin gave his game worn sweater to the family and got to know the Blues. They really get it. They've done a lot of good things for them. So Elsa passed away on Wednesday last week. Her services are Thursday and Friday, and she is by far the most courageous and bravest human being I've ever met. I've known her this whole journey, and then some. I mean, she's been battling this since she was 6, and defied all the odds and kept playing practical jokes on all the nurses all the way through, and got to do a little bit of a bucket list the last year. Her parents and her and Kevin, Adrian, Claire, and Eli, her sister, and her brother. With them, when this drops, we'll be at her funeral, and it's the good news about me having a lot of irons in the fire, Chazzy, is I've been had some trying to distract myself a little bit from this one, because this one really, really, really stings, and it's been, just unarticulatable.
Yeah.
The level of grief and helplessness for your friends, for this beautiful little angel girl that is no longer with us, and I know no longer battling this horrible disease, and it's just a whole thing. Obviously, I don't have the words. I need to come up with them by Friday, because they've asked me to say something. And I don't know what I'll say, but I will say that my recovery journey has been pretty parallel to her battle with leukemia, and watching her fight that has been an absolute inspiration in my personal one day at a time journey. There oftentimes, if Elsa can battle this and do this. And I know sometimes that kind of Peter perspective shit gets a little bit hard to hear, but when you're saying it, you've said this before, like when you use it as a rallying cry from within and to help you stay, you probably don't want to tell other people that.
Sure.
But when I used it from within, especially early on, she's a hero of mine, and been a tough week. Add some more irons in the fire so I can continue to distract.
Yeah, well, that's one of the
you probably wouldn't
practices. Well, no, I do. We'll keep them in our mind all week, in our heart all week, and going forward. But I also there's something to that. You mentioned the kind of perspective shift or anything like that, but then you say like, oh, it's part of my one day at a time. We're talking a lot here about the one day at a time, not through the lens of just this kind of white knuckle. You don't have control. You only have now. We're also talking about it through like, it can one day at a time be the practice of changing your shoes and putting your sweater on when you get home? Can one day at a time be, the really kind of beautiful thing that Ashley changes her candlesticks out depending on decor in the season?
Gee.
Can
melted wax everywhere,
which is beautiful. Can one day at a time be these little sacred rituals that it's not that you lack spirituality, it's that sometimes we don't have a strong enough belief in ourselves to find the spirituality that we've been practicing day to day anyways, and just kind of look for those little moments, those kind of sacred opportunities that are there that you can just sit with for a second, because that's kind of the one day at a time thing. And the family will be, I said, in our mind and our heart, and
always.
And hopefully as their lifetime of grief begins, their support within it extends there as well. And I hope somebody needed to hear that.
Amen.